Hello, hello. We are back with another crossover video. I believe one of quite a few crossovers that we'll see today as we have college football back, Pac-12 action back again for week 3. I'm Michael Strite here, one of your two hosts of Ducks Dash, but I'm joined by a member of Bruins Dash, Jack Perez. Good to have you, Jack. We're very excited. I mean, at this point, there's so many games that get taken away. We're always just pumped to know that as far as we know, the game is still planned to be going down tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got UCLA apparently has traveled up there, not with the whole team, but they're getting up to Eugene, and it's gonna be an exciting day tomorrow. I mean, middle
Yeah.
of the day game is always a good time.
Oh yeah. No, I was just talking to someone else about this is the prime that when you want a game, you get it going at 12. It's not super early in the morning, but it's over by 4. Very nice, very nice. So 12:30 is the time slot. Originally, it was going to be a night Friday game. Then UCLA, they have their game moved to Sunday last week, so this one gets pushed back a day also. I was worried it was going to be another very late Pac-12 after dark kind of game, but no, they got us right there at the 12:30 slot, right on ESPN. Looking forward to that. All that is splendid. And looking at these two squads, Oregon, they're 2-0. They have two first halves in two games that were so-so, and then two incredibly dominant second halves where they very clearly looked like a top 10 team in the country. They dominate Stanford 35-14. They drop 43 points on Washington State to win 43-29. Now UCLA, they've only played one game, but after rescheduling last minute to face Cal on Sunday, they get a really dominant win over Cal, and they start 1-0. And Jack, this is the first time in the Chip Kelly era of coaching UCLA that they are going to be at 500 or above. So you've got that
Well, I got
1-0
you there,
feeling.
Michael. We did have that Colorado game. I know as much as we want to forget that Colorado game, we did have that week
Oh,
one.
you're right. Oh my gosh, yes, I'm
Which,
sorry.
oh man, Chip Kelly and that
Yeah.
entire offense would love to forget that drubbing. I mean, it was only within 6 points, but that was a first half of nightmares.
I think I was doing you a favor by saying forget the Colorado game. I what is it? Colorado's quarterback Neuer is like the highest rated quarterback in the Pac-12 right now, and that's just because of what he did to UCLA.
Oh man,
Um,
he looked like he was a professional quarterback out there, and you forget that he played safety the year before and hadn't started a game at quarterback since 2015. All of a sudden, UCLA's defense makes him look like a god
That
out
is
there.
insane. And I remember last year, literally someone I know from Colorado was like, "Oh man, we have so many injuries. We're starting our safety at quarterback. Like this is getting bad." And then all of a sudden it's like, "Well, you have this freaking secret quarterback that's so good." So moving on to Saturday's matchup, both teams are coming off a win. UCLA is making the travel up to Autzen Stadium, up to Eugene. So they're going to be big underdogs, and they're also going to be on the road trying to do something in Autzen Stadium. Obviously, the recent history for UCLA against Oregon, not the best, but there was, like you said, in that when last time that Oregon went to LA, there was that victory for the Bruins. But it's been a little bit. So what are you looking at for this matchup tomorrow?
I mean, the UCLA defense is night and day from week one to week two. All of a sudden, giving up almost 500 yards to a Colorado offense that was missing their starting running back, missing their starting wide receiver, new head coach, new quarterback, and they made them look like it was an easy walk through the park. Then you come out against a Cal team who has Garbers. Maybe they hadn't played yet, but they looked bad. They gained under 200 yards for the whole game, and all of a sudden, UCLA's defense looks like they're a professional team out there. Whichever unit shows up to Oregon is going to determine whether it's a blowout or not. I don't particularly think UCLA is going to win. They have problems right now with COVID issues. DTR might not be making that trip up there. No one's sure. They should be having enough guys to play the game, but realistically, you want to improve week to week, and you're not expected to go on the road, beat Oregon. Everyone since the day the schedule came out said this is the game where you're not expected to win it. As well as you can do, just go out there and compete. So I'm looking at that defense to really improve and show that against a freshman quarterback that they can command the game a little bit. What are you looking for from the Oregon side of the ball?
Yeah, Oregon. It's been a weird start for them because defensively, me and Izzy on Duck Stash, we've talked about, oh, this defense should be the best defense in the Pac-12. Like we both agreed on that. They've returned so much experience. They should be so dominant, and that the offense was the question mark. The offense had this brand new quarterback, brand new offensive line, brand new offensive coordinator, and instead, it's the first two games has been a little bit weird as an Oregon fan to watch because you're seeing the defense with one sack total in the first two games. Not great. Definitely hasn't looked like the best defense in the conference. And yet the offense has been incredible. They scored 6 touchdowns against Washington State last week on the road in the cold. They made it work. They ran all over the Cougars, and now facing the Bruins at home. I I'm sold on Joe Moorhead and this offense, but I need this defense to take care of business and put down one of those performances where UCLA scores under 20 points and maybe you mix in some turnovers as well. Maybe you throw in some sacks as well. I mean, this is a defense that can't keep having average performances. These are the games that you have to be dominant if you expect to then take on some of these really, really great teams that they could be facing at the end of the year. So Oregon's, my eyes are on the defense and whether they improve, just like for you, whether UCLA's defense improves. And UCLA is in a really weird spot because of, like you said, you have that one game where they got smoked, and you have another game where Cal did not score very many points. They did not look comfortable on offense at all. Is for you, I mean, is it like 50-50? Do you not know which UCLA defense is going to show up, or are you leaning towards one of those two defenses potentially coming out on Saturday?
A big storyline this entire offseason has been the hire of Coach Brian Norwood from Navy. He is just supposed to be the defensive backs coach, but at Navy, he was defensive coordinator, and he implemented the 4-2-5. UCLA's pass defense last year was horrific. We talk about it all the time over on Bruin Dash, how bad that pass defense was last year. And the first week, Sam Neuer made it look like it was going to be the same old story. But as the defense was getting more comfortable, especially in the second half of the Colorado game and then coming into the Cal game, they looked like a team that had really transitioned and bought into this new system. So how they work in that 4-2-5 is going to be a big deal. It's also going to be a big deal if they can create turnovers. Oregon's last right now in turnover differential in the conference.
Oh, yeah.
I think possibly in the nation. It's close to it. But yeah. UCLA is not much better. That first half against Colorado, they committed 4 turnovers. DTR had an interception, and then they had 3 fumbles from guys that are usually pretty reliable with the ball. Then at Cal, DTR threw another early interception, put the defense in a tough spot, but the defense was able to create a turnover of their own later on in the game, even out the battle. If UCLA is able to come and possibly win the turnover battle by 2, 3, I'm not saying it's going to be a win, but you're putting yourself in a competitive spot right there. Make the freshman quarterback, make the inexperienced offense make some mistakes. And if DTR is able to go on this weekend, he needs to not throw the ball to the other team. I know it's tempting for him because he's done that every single game this year, and he was one of the leaders last year in the nation in interceptions. But if he can keep throwing the ball to the right team, or if Chip Kelly can just implement an offense where he's not forced to make tough throws like that, UCLA should be in a very good spot.
Yeah, this Oregon, we haven't talked about that Oregon turnover differential because it is baffling. I mean, you have Oregon with 2 very convincing wins. They were clearly the better team, yet they have 0 forced turnovers as defense, and they've given the ball away 5 times on offense. And when you look at the box score and you see that they're losing the turnover battle, it gives the other team a chance for sure. I mean, it opens the door, and it's scary to see Oregon do that twice. Like you said, among the worst in the nation right now. Every subsequent time that they're going to do it, at some point it's going to come back to bite the Ducks. It may not be against UCLA. It may not be for a while. But if this is going to be a trend all season for Oregon that they're, giving the ball away consistently 1, 2, 3 times a game, it's going to cost them a win without a doubt. The same way that Oregon's kicking unit with Camden Lewis, I believe he's 0 for 2 on field goals this season. At the very least, we know he missed his first attempt. I don't know if he maybe got any attempts. And to give him credit, he's been great on extra points. He's made every extra point, right? But it is the longest kick that Oregon made last year was 40 yards. That was the longest successful field goal. And it does not look like Camden Lewis has improved much going into this year. It's the same situation. If the field goal unit is a weakness, if the turnovers are going to be there, you're opening the door for some stuff to happen, for the game to be close, for it to come down to the wire. And that's why I think for me the key to this game is going to be the first few drives of the game for UCLA on offense. Whether that's DTR, we'll talk about that later. Whoever's out there for UCLA on offense, I think the first three times that they get a chance to score, they get the ball in that game is going to be very important. Is Oregon going to have another slow start where they need to wake up? Or are they going to put the clamps on and really set the tone from the beginning of the game? Because this is something that I thought would be a trend for Oregon. And I'm going to keep flexing it while I can because I said it would be a theme of the season. And so far it is that Oregon is going to play much better in the second half. They're going to be a second half team. And that means that if they are in the lead after the first half, they get to play their style of football. They get to grind out a win. So for UCLA, it's very important to start the game well early and to set the game up, to just make it interesting, make it a close first half to have a chance to mix things up. And so now we're going to talk about, moving over, what would you consider successful for each team? Oregon is favored by 13 and a half. It was sort of 17 in some places. I mean, this is a big spread. Oregon's definitely the favorite. They're at Autzen Stadium. But UCLA is also at that 1-1 spot. What are you looking for to walk away as a UCLA fan and just win or lose, be happy with where the Bruins are going?
Look, I would just love a mistake-free game. I mean, special teams has usually kind of been a strength for UCLA in the past, but we have a new punter, a new kicker. Our return guys haven't done especially well this year. I mean, Dimitri Felton had a turnover on offense, but he hasn't looked great on kick returns. Kyle Phillips had a fumble in the first game against Colorado, and he hasn't looked great on the punt returns. And then we've got a redshirt freshman kicker who missed a point after touchdown last week, which is never a good sign. I mean, luckily the game was pretty far out of reach, but that could come back to bite you. And we had a punt block last week. It's a tough transition. Obviously, we had a Wade Lees, who was a great punter, and we had J.J. Molson, who tried to go to the NFL but was pretty consistent on kicks within 40. It's a mistake-free game for UCLA. Special teams, offense, defense. Look, no one's expecting you to go up to Oregon and win. No one's expecting that. But show some growth. Show a competitive fire. Get it within single digits. All of a sudden, you're starting to put the scare into teams like a USC, who has been struggling pretty recently. A Utah, who, if you ever do end up playing Utah, if it gets rescheduled, that's a team that you want to come out and beat because they haven't beaten them in the Chip Kelly era. You start to put in the fear into a team like Arizona because realistically, UCLA should be Arizona this year. That's one of the games that UCLA is favored in. But after the game in Colorado where they were also favored and they laid an egg for the first half, you want to come out and have some momentum going into the next week. What are you looking for from Oregon? Because, I mean, how much better can you get than a 2-0 start in a number 11 ranking?
Yeah, it's hard to get much better than that. But, Jack, it's going to be a mistake-free game for Oregon that I'd like to see. You talked about UCLA. I mean, if they're going to win those games down the road against the Utahs and Arizonas, and if they're going to have a chance against Oregon, they got to just play clean. You can't have a punt block. You can't have a fumble. You can't have those very obvious mistakes where it's just a bad throw or just a guy not holding the ball right. You cannot afford those. And if they do play a mistake-free game, which I want to give them a credit, they may well go out and just be very clean, very disciplined. I expect the first half to be really tight, and I expect it to be a really, really good competitive game all the way through. UCLA definitely gives himself a chance to win this game if they don't make any mistakes. Now, for Oregon, it's the same thing. How many red flags are we going to see this game? Because Oregon, again, the offense has blown past expectations. The defense has been good enough to make both games not close. I mean, in the second half, they both sort of in the third quarter, both games, it was like, okay, Oregon's in the lead, but this is still open for a comeback. And then the fourth quarter was just shut the door. Oregon wins. And so it's hard to complain about these things, but you see, I can list off all these red flags. I mean, the turnover differential, the lack of sacks on defense, the Tyler Shuck maybe not being put in a pressure situation yet, maybe not having to play from behind quite so much yet, not knowing how he'll respond to that. as well as the lack of sacks on defense. I mean, these are all things that are concerns from the first couple games that you don't want to see them continue to be concerns, because if this is the third game in a row where they lose the turnover battle by two or more, we're going to keep talking about it, me and Izzy. If this is the third game where they get just one sack or less than one sack, we're going to talk about it. Even no matter what the score is, that is the kind of stuff that loses you a game down the line, maybe against a USC, maybe against a Washington, maybe they go 7-0, but you just lay an egg in the bowl game because you never fix these issues. A lot to look at. Looking at the spread. So Oregon, they were around 10, 11, 12-point favorites, depending on where you looked, in weeks 1 and 2. And they actually beat the spread in both games because they beat Stanford by 21. They beat Washington State by 14. They are, if you're betting on Oregon, you're 2-0 this season. This game, they're at 13.5 is what I saw right before this game started. Some places you'll find even more than that. So this is Oregon as the biggest favorite they've been all year. Do you think that's because of how Oregon has looked in those first two games, or do you think it's more sort of a pessimistic outlook on UCLA traveling up to Oregon?
I think it's got to be a little bit of both. I mean, you've got a solid Oregon team. They've had a good coach and a good program for a while now. They haven't looked really shaky in a while. It's a team that almost everyone picked to win the Pac-12 this year. And UCLA was a team that, yeah, they should grow. Chip Kelly's in his third year. DTR's in his third year. This should be a team that's busting out. But if Chip Kelly continues to play that pro-style offense he tried to push in that first half of the Colorado game, it's going to be a 20, 25-point game at least. That's not even considering if DTR is playing or not. Now, if DTR plays and if UCLA is completely healthy, they need to go back to the offense that they played against Cal, which was a very run-heavy, blur offense that Chip Kelly used to run at Oregon. It doesn't really make sense that he's trying to fit DTR into this pro-style offense that he obviously doesn't work well in. He's throwing the ball away a lot. He's throwing it into dangerous positions. Roll him out. Use the read option because you've got Demetric Felton, you've got Casimir Allen, and you've got DTR in the backfield. Those are three of the fastest guys in the entire conference. You've got Britton Brown if you need to run up and down, but honestly, you should be going spread. You should be getting out there. You should be using this speed because Oregon's defense, while it's been okay, it's not the same Oregon defense that has been there in the past few years. And UCLA needs to do something different. It needs to do something to take advantage of all this talent they have in the backfield. Now, if DTR doesn't play and they have someone like Chase Griffin back there, I expect this line to move a lot more in Oregon's favor. And Oregon should be able to cover it. We haven't seen Griffin play, but there's been concerns about him. He's only 5'11". He's pretty small. The offensive line is a little shaky, especially after losing two starters from last year, but they did decently well against a Cal team that hadn't really practiced. So I don't know how much you can take away from that, but it's really going to come down to whether this team adapts to Chip Kelly's new offense, or if Chip Kelly tries to go back to his old offense. This team's gonna struggle so badly, and it's gonna be an embarrassing night for him up in Oregon.
Yeah, potentially, definitely. And that's why that line is at 14, is because there is a lot of blowout potential. If UCLA leans on that athleticism, if they're healthy, if they play mistake-free football, this will be a competitive, good game. This will be a game that may still be close in the fourth quarter, or at the very least, UCLA could enter the fourth quarter with a chance to still steal it. But that's a lot of ifs. If you're looking at a lot of players missing, if you're looking at the offense just still not knowing what to do, not clicking quite the way they should, then you're in blowout territory. Then you're looking at the Ducks easily covering that 13.5. I don't think I exactly made a prediction last week, but I'm actually 0-2 on picking Oregon because I thought both weeks 1 and 2 would be closer than people thought. And they kind of were. It's just that Oregon, once they take control, they know how to really run it up in that fourth quarter, in that second half, and say, never mind, this is our game, right? So both games were close for a point, and then Oregon just ends up beating the spread. And in this game, it's tough. I mean, I think I need to lean on that spread and say Oregon is going to win by more than 14, and we'll get to our picks at the end. But I think Oregon does actually continue that trend of being 3-0 if you are, gambling on them every week. Because of that blowout potential. I mean, especially if it's at 13.5, which we talked about how if the news broke yesterday the DTR would definitely be out as opposed to questionable where he is right now, this line would either get frozen or it would be up to 17, 16 because that, all Oregon's got to do is win by 2 touchdowns to beat this. So we move on to our third topic, which is the quarterback situation. It's been an interesting season for both teams at the quarterback position. Oregon has had a controversy at the quarterback spot. A lot of people wanting to see Anthony Brown, the senior transfer from Boston College, come into play, and he hasn't played at all because Tyler Shuck has had 2 really good performances for Oregon. Everybody's happy with Tyler Shuck at the quarterback position right now, as good as you can do for your first 2 starts, in the Pac-12. And for UCLA, a lot of debate about whether DTR was going to make that leap and a lot of questions still to answer about how much better he is than last year, and the question now of whether he's going to play. So, Jack, I'll let you lay out the situation we have for who's going to be out there at quarterback for UCLA tomorrow.
Yeah, UCLA knew from the start of the season it was DTR or die. They didn't really have a backup plan. We had Austin Burton last year who came in to fill when DTR was injured. He was okay, but he transferred out at the end of last season. So Chip Kelly knew, I'm going to design an offense for DTR, and I'm going to run it through him no matter what. All of a sudden, news broke last night that possibly he wouldn't be able to play, and everyone was kind of confused. Then an hour or two later, people are saying that him and a few other players might be in quarantine awaiting negative COVID tests because they were in contact with someone that tested positive. And that's a huge, huge blow for UCLA because the backup quarterback situation has been a nightmare for Chip Kelly all season. He didn't name one until he hasn't really named one at all. All we know is that last week, once UCLA had pulled away from Cal, it was a 24-point game at the end. Chase Griffin came in, took a couple snaps, handed them off, ran one time for 1 yard, didn't throw the ball at all. He hasn't thrown the ball in a couple of years because he's been firmly behind DTR on this offense. There's another Chase on the back spot who technically was listed as the number 2, but he hasn't played a collegiate game ever. Colson Yankoff, who a lot of people thought would be the number 2, switched to wide receiver in the middle of fall training camp. So all of a sudden you've got all these guys that are supposed to line up and be a replacement option for DTR, but Chip Kelly never seriously considered them. He thought this is going to be the year, even though DTR has had a lot of turnovers, even though he's had injuries in the past, this was the year he was supposed to take a leap. And granted, he has taken a leap. He's looked so good for a lot of these games. Now, yes, there are times where he obviously threw it into the other team's hands. There was a couple of missed picks from Colorado in week 1 that should have been turnovers. There was a fumble early on in the Colorado game, but he's been looking like a really solid option. If this dude doesn't come out this weekend, it is going to be a rough go at it. I'm assuming Chase Griffin is going to be the starter if DTR indeed doesn't make the trip. But at that point, how much can you really put on him? It's going to be a run-heavy game at that point. And, oh man, UCLA will not survive this.
Oregon fans had I think this may have been 3 years ago at this point, but during one of Justin Herbert's stretches where he was injured, not only did Oregon lose Justin Herbert as sort of the captain of the team and the quarterback that is so talented, but the backup quarterback, Braxton Burmeister, was painful to watch. I mean, it was not just, oh, this quarterback is so good, but this backup is so not good, not ready. And it was really a big disparity. And like you said, I think that's what you're pointing to is that UCLA, DTR is a focal point of this offense. And the backup quarterback isn't just somebody that you're like, oh, I like him too. It's like, oh no, this is not a lot of confidence that you have there in Chase Griffin. Like you said, Chase Griffin, also the offense doesn't quite match him the way that DTR does. So I think we've established that if it is Chase Griffin starting, this is a even much, much bleaker outlook for UCLA. But let's say, DTR, the rumor is that there are UCLA players that may not be able to play, that are quarantined, that maybe didn't even fly to Eugene. But let's say that this was all, things clear up and he does get a negative test and DTR is rocking and ready to roll. If you just look at points scored, it's been 2 great weeks for UCLA putting points on the board. And for DTR, it's been a really good season so far in terms of, like you said, commanding this offense, getting UCLA what they need on offense, besides a lot of turnovers, missed opportunities, stuff like that. How do you think DTR, hypothetically could face off against this Oregon defense? And do you think he could make some noise and continue to do well and put up
Yeah,
30 plus?
here's the thing. Chip Kelly has really redesigned this offense to be DTR's offense. He gave him a little bit more command this year. He feels a little bit more comfortable with him, and it's shown. Right, there are times where he looks a little frazzled out there. I mean, if he's getting pressured in the pocket, if he's rolling out and he's just throwing it into coverage, it looks rough at times. And there's always a couple plays each game where it's like, why did you do that? What's going on? But then there's those moments of magic. He had like a 60-yard plus run against Colorado that was amazing. He's had a couple of deep throws that go right into his guys' hands. He has the talent. But I think if he goes up against this Oregon team, and it's an Oregon team that is still looking a little shaky, is still maybe not as confident as they should be, he could put up big numbers. Now, whether that translates to a UCLA win is a different story, because obviously one man can't do everything himself. But there's the potential for DTR to put up 5-6 touchdowns on this Oregon defense. Does that come with 3 or 4 turnovers, or does that come with no interceptions and a no fumbles all game? Who knows? He's always been that kind of way. He had 21 turnovers last year, and you can't sustainably do that over an entire season. He's already got 3 this year through 2 games, which not horrible, but if you have 1.5 every single game out there, you're not really putting your team in a winning position, especially if you're hurting your defense. His first pick against Colorado was within the 20-yard line, and all of a sudden Colorado looked unstoppable because a UCLA defense can't do anything at that point. If the DTR that showed up against Cal shows up, it's going to be video game numbers out there, because he's going to have to put that offense on his back. Now, what are you looking at from Oregon's side of view? Because, I mean, they've got good players all around. How much are they really going to have to rely on their QB position?
Yeah, this Oregon offense is designed not around Tyler Shuck in the sense that it gets the most out of him because everything else he can lean on. I mean, the offensive line he's actually been leaning on because they've been better than expected. He has playmakers all around. What's been so refreshing and awesome about Tyler Shuck is that he has been running the ball so well. I mean, this is back-to-back games of over 80 rushing yards. We did not think Tyler Shuck was going to be a running quarterback, but he's in this RPO offense with Joe Moorhead, and he is executing it. And it has been really impressive to just see him bust off these 10, 15, 20-yard runs both weeks, right? And the caveat with that is that he still does look like a new quarterback. He's not a freshman quite, right? He's a sophomore, but he does look a little bit shaky with fumbles, with interceptions, with not making the right throw. But by and large, Oregon fans, he's took command of this offense. He hasn't replaced Justin Herbert because you can't do that, and we know Oregon fans know that you can't do that. But he's been what Oregon needs to make it work this season. Like, no complaints really about the offense. I mean, they scored 43 last week, and it was video game numbers. And as we are about to wrap this show, Jack, we are going to get into our picks. Maybe if you want, you can do a DTR pick and a Chase Griffin pick separately. But what is going to be your prediction for Oregon versus UCLA, 12:30 kickoff in Autzen Stadium?
I'm thinking if DTR is there, it's going to be 38-28 Oregon. It's still going to be a double-digit game. UCLA is not going to come out quite as good as they are, but DTR is going to have a couple good touchdowns. They're going to look solid, but the defense will be a little bit shaky. Without him, I'm thinking 31-14 Oregon. I think Oregon's going to let off the gas pedal a little bit, especially if they take command early on in the game and just cruise control through the second half. What are your picks?
Yeah, I'm going to roll with 38-14 for Oregon. I wanted to make this a little bit closer, but over the course of this episode, I think, talking about the stuff going on with UCLA, I think Oregon's offense does get that 38. They're going to step on the gas in that second half. And it's going to be, I think Oregon defense finally has that game that Oregon fans are looking for, where they really look good and they really look dominant. And it'll be 17 to 14 points for the UCLA offense. And like we said, both very excited for this game going down tomorrow. We're both very happy with the time. Thank you for joining me, Jack, here on this crossover episode. Remember to follow us at Dash Sports TV, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're doing it all. Read our columns at Sports Pack 12. And happy College Football Saturday. Again, we got another week of games ahead, and have a great Friday, guys.